Welcome to the Breaking 90 podcast, where we talk about all things sustainable fat loss. We take people on 90-day journeys to creating fat loss forever. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoy the episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Breaking 90 podcast. I'm your host, Alex Harriman, here with my co-host, Kelly Sarlo. We are two of the coaches of Breaking 90 Fitness. Thank you for being here with us. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Hey, Kelly.
Hi, how are you?
Doing great. How you doing?
Good. What's new in your world?
New in my world. I just recently got back from Mexico with Dev, as you know. It was awesome. And we've come home to some pretty crazy weather, but it was just good to get away and chill. And we got a lot of steps in, did a lot of walking, ate a lot of great food. So it was nice little reset for us anyways. Yeah.
Good for you. You also did a really cool recap of like what it's like to come back from a vacation.
Hmm.
You're not necessarily on track with health and fitness. I know you guys were still active and like that's super important to you, but like what the scale does, even when you've done the vacation well.
Yeah, I gained like 9 pounds when I first got back, which isn't unusual for me. I have big water retention swings, but I wanted to talk about it for our audience because I know a lot of people have been in that situation and don't fully understand why. So you and I understand that a huge part of that is water retention, but it's still shocking when you stand on the scale and you're like 9 pounds heavier, right?
Yes, it is.
This was actually good. Like this vacation, I worked out every day or two. We went for walks every single day. We ate tons of fruits and vegetables, drank tons of water. Like it was a pretty healthy vacation in terms of an all-inclusive. Like don't get me wrong, I still ate way more than I would here, but all in all pretty tame.
Good for you. Well, I'm glad
Yeah.
you guys had that time to yourselves and to rest and relax.
Yeah.
Um, Today we are going to be busting myths, also discussing some tips and tricks of fat loss.
Got it.
So let's roll.
Okay, so what I did is I just Googled like biggest fat loss myths because I was like, there's a million, honestly. And if you guys are listening to this and you're like, what about this? What about this? Just reach out and ask me because this episode could go on forever. So I just looked up most common myths, and I'm gonna touch on a few of those. And then with each one, gonna give you some tips, tricks, and strategies that are actually proven to work.
Amazing. I love it. I'm ready.
Okay, first one that I liked that I saw was carbohydrates. Everybody thinks carbohydrates are the enemy. I shouldn't say everybody. I feel like this is less and less now than it used to be. I think a lot of people used to think carbs were the enemy. I hope it's getting better. Carbohydrates are not the enemy, guys. They are one of your greatest energy sources. When we look at the three macronutrients, carbohydrates, protein, and fat, carbohydrates are providing your body the most ready to use energy source out of the three macronutrients. So when we're talking about performance and energy, most of that's coming from your carbohydrates. So denying that, they're not you can do with minimal, but you're going to notice it. It's going to affect your performance. It's going to affect your energy. So I don't want people thinking that a carbohydrate is any better or worse than any other calorie. They all serve their purpose. They're all important. A balance is ideal. Um, the reason that carbohydrates get such a bad name is because a carbohydrate a gram of carbohydrate stores more water than a gram of protein or a gram of fat.
Mhm.
So people attribute the scale movement with what's actually happening from a progress standpoint. I had a lot of carbohydrates, I gained a lot of weight, but that's not really the case. You had a lot of carbohydrates, you retained a lot of water.
Mhm.
That's not the same thing. And so that's really important to note. So my tip for carbohydrates is that don't eliminate them if you're on a fat loss journey. Our whole goal is to reduce calorie intake during a fat loss journey. So we should probably reduce some of our carbohydrate intake along with our fat, but it doesn't have to be altogether. And so if you are minimizing your carbohydrates and you want to optimize where you're getting those energy sources, the meals before and after your workout is where your body requires the most energy coming into the workout and the most energy replenishment after the workout. So those are the two meals where you're going to get the most bang for your buck if you're reducing your carbohydrates. And then the last thing I'll note before I let you go jump in here is that your fruits and vegetables are also carbohydrates. So we don't want we often hear people say like, yeah, I'm not eating any carbs. Like you are eating carbs. You're not eating your starchy carbs. You're avoiding breads, you're avoiding pastas, you're avoiding rices, you're avoiding potatoes, but your fruits and vegetables are still a carbohydrate. That's one of your carb sources. So yeah, just a little side note.
I'm not jumping in. I love all of this. I think the only thing I was gonna maybe add was that they're not all equal value in the nutrients they're providing, right? And I think when
Sure.
people use the umbrella term carbohydrates and say, I'm not eating them, even though, as you mentioned, they are, choosing to eat restaurant style tortilla chips versus a sweet potato is going to give you a very different experience in your body and your energy.
Yep. Yep, and I just actually had this conversation with one of our clients this morning before this episode, is that um we assign our clients a certain amount of carbs per day, if you will. It gets a little bit more complex than that, but we essentially say this is how many carbs per day I want you to have. Um some of those should come from comfort, like a potato chip. Some of those should come from foods that are fueling our body optimally, foods that are in line with our goals. We can't we It's okay to have a balance where some of them are the things we want to eat and some of the things we know we should eat. But what Kelly's saying is exactly right. Like there's a massive, if you're like, okay, I can only have this many grams of carbs per day, and you're saving all those grams of carbs for your drinks and your chips and your desserts, like it's going to have a big impact on the way you feel and the way you perform and the way you recover and the way you lose fat.
I love that. And one of the things that's you've said that's really stuck with me is that in this entire journey and in life, there's always a good, better, best, right? So it's not, I mean, not using that example to vilify the tortilla chip and say always choose the sweet potato. It's to say that there's a good, better, best option. And that wherever you are on the journey, if you're just starting out, don't go all or nothing into only choosing the best option. Make a little bit better of a decision.
Yep. You probably even years into your journey don't need to always choose the best option. The only time I'd say you always have to choose the best option is if your goal is to compete or get on stage. Like that's it.
Absolutely. Okay, number two.
Um, there's I just umbrellaed this one with fat burning foods. So things like grapefruit, apple cider vinegar, um warm water versus cold water, like any of these things is bullshit. So don't get me wrong, there's reasons that some of these are beneficial in that a grapefruit's super high fiber, it's filling, it's low calorie, it's like it will help you lose fat because it's probably going to stop you from drinking or eating something that's higher calorie and worse for you, but it's not doing anything magical.
Mhm.
The cider vinegar might make you want to puke, so then you're not going to eat anything after. So yeah, maybe in that sense, it's helping you lose fat. But like all of these things you see online, all the ads that pop up, and it's like the one trick to make you lose fat. Like it doesn't work. It's not real. If it was real, everybody would be doing it, guys. It's not like there's nothing out there that's a secret anymore. So if you see something like this and it's the latest, greatest hack, like it's probably not true. What works is consistently being in a calorie deficit. So any of these things that we can do to help us create a calorie deficit, yeah, it's a trick. It's something that's going to help you along your way. But this stuff like drinking warm water versus cold water isn't going to make you lose fat faster.
Mhm. Awesome.
So my tip to go with that is that looking for substitutions is a smart way to burn fat. Like choosing a grapefruit instead of whatever your go-to sweet would be, because you're getting the sweetness out of it, has a lot of fiber, it is low calorie, it's going to keep you full longer. Choosing a substitution to replace something of a higher caloric value, that's a smart way to lose fat. Choosing I know Kelly loves when I say this, choosing Greek yogurt instead of sour cream is a great way to make a substitution that most people aren't going to notice. They have a very similar taste. Greek yogurt has a way higher protein content. It can be mixed into most recipes or food choices where sour cream is called for. Things like that. Like, I'm not saying that doesn't work. That is a smart way to approach this.
Yeah. Oh, we're not calling those things fat burning foods.
Right. Right. I
That's
know, like, yeah, there's tons of them, like cayenne pepper. There's all kinds of things that people are like, it boosts your metabolism. Like it's it's not helping you.
I think what people maybe don't understand is the business of foods, right? And understanding that there is a marketing team trying to sell that food. And so they're packaging it with this nice wording or attractive buzzwords like fat burning that's making you, have your interest piqued. But that doesn't mean there's actually scientific magic. I can't believe I put those words together, happening within the foods.
Well, and the thing is, like, everything that we do changes our metabolic rate. So, like, if I stand right now instead of sit, my metabolic rate slightly changes. I'm burning a little bit more because I'm standing. So if you put your body under stress, your body has to burn a little bit more calories to recover, to help repair from that. How much is so minimal that it's not worth talking about. So maybe like putting something in your body that's vile, or something in your body that's super spicy, that your body now all of a sudden is like panic, panic, panic. There probably is a slight increase in metabolic rate, but the amount that it would be so minimal, it wouldn't even be worth talking about. So if you're gonna be like choking down a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar each day because you think you're burning more calories, like I promise you, walking around your house will have a better impact.
Yeah, that's awesome. My brain's going to like jobs that could market their job descriptions as a fat burning job. 'Cause I know,
Yeah.
it's just such stress.
We don't let you sit down. You're constantly stressed out and you never get a break. You're gonna burn tons of fat.
Yeah, absolutely. People would be like, sign me up. You're like, well, actually. Okay, number three.
Um, Fasting or skipping breakfast is optimal for fat loss. So, um, this is, once again, there's some truth behind these things, and there's some myth behind these things. So fasting or skipping breakfast, same idea. Basically, you're fasting meaning that we're eating for a smaller window of time than typical, and we're not eating, or we're fasting for the remainder. Fasting in itself doesn't increase metabolic rate, doesn't cause you to lose fat faster. What it does is it gives you a shorter window of time to eat, which typically results in people eating less food. And if we eat less food, we create a calorie deficit, we lose fat. So it can be used as a tool. Now, the downside to fasting is that, yes, it's typically easier to eat less food. It becomes much more difficult to eat enough of the proper foods. So if, for instance, on a day when you're sick, you don't feel like eating, you also don't feel like eating a ton of protein, fruits, and vegetables. So if I have a very small window now, all of a sudden, where I could normally spread my protein, fruits, and vegetables out over my entire day, have a little bit here, have a little bit here, have a little bit here. It's not that hard. It's still a challenge. This is stuff that's not going to come naturally for most people, getting in those three, but spreading it out makes it a little bit easier. Now, when we have a shortened eating window, it is easier to eat less, but you still want to have the same balances that you would in an entire day. So you still want to have some protein, fruits, and vegetables with your other carbs and fat for the first meal, some protein, fruits, and vegetables with your other carbs and fat for the other meal. Now you're eating less, but you're also getting way less protein, fruits, and vegetables in most situations. So to do it properly, your meals need to be way heavier on the protein, fruits, and vegetables in a shortened eating window, which a lot of people don't want to, which then as a result leads to a lot of cravings and like lower energy, not feeling as great, starving leading up to your eating window. So I'd say in most cases it doesn't make sense for people unless you're very disciplined and you're going to be able to force yourself to do the things you don't want to do.
Yeah, I think it's important to, and correct me if you said this and I just missed it. It's not necessarily that just because people don't want to access the healthy foods in that shorter period of time. It's that because that period of time is shorter, for someone who fills up pretty quickly on, let's say, one chicken breast, one serving of protein, if you're trying to get two servings in at one meal because you have a smaller window of eating, you might feel like you're not able to get all of that in at that point, right? It's not that you might be trying to resist it, but that your body's like, I'm full, I can't do it. That's not necessarily an opportune situation.
Yep. Yep. Agreed. And then like most people still want to have some of that other stuff, like have some of the potato and stuff. So then all of a sudden, like your meals become super filling if you're not a big eater. If you're trying to get in two servings of protein, two servings of vegetable, and you still want to have some of the potato or the carb or the that which we talked about earlier leads to a lot of your energy source. So it does make sense for people. I'm not saying it doesn't make sense. It does make sense for some people. It's a tool in the toolbox, but it doesn't, nothing magical comes from fasting. You're not losing more fat just because you're fasting. You don't ruin anything if you eat outside your fasting window. It's not like there's a magical happening here, but it certainly can be another tool in the toolbox.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, like fasting is actually more typically done to help you have a healthy reset for your gut. It wasn't intentional to have a fat loss consequence or a fat loss benefit. It was to give a reset, a rest for the digestive system. Am I okay so far?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. And what I find really interesting too is that the concept of a breakfast, lunch, and dinner is actually just very much man-made. The only thing that is a true meal is breakfast because it is the first meal that breaks the fast. Lunch and dinner are associated with times of day. Breakfast became associated with a time of day, which meant morning for most of us, or the types of foods that you eat at these meals. But again, these are all like very boxy constructs that we all just fell prey to, not thinking about them. Whenever you're breaking your fast, whether that's at 9 a.m. or 1 p.m., that's breakfast. You're not
Yeah.
skipping it. You're just condensing the time in which you're eating your meals.
Yep. Yep. And there's a lot of other claims around things like fasting, around things like keto. And I'm not by any means claiming to be a scientist or a doctor. There may be other health benefits to some of these things. I'm talking strictly from a fat loss standpoint.
Mhm.
So my tip with that is instead of skipping breakfast, try to make your breakfast a really high protein breakfast. For most people, protein is something we struggle to get enough of. If we can get a lot of it early in the day, eat the frog early in the day, then it makes it easier the rest of the day to get our protein goals. The protein keeps us full longer. The protein stops us typically from the snacking and grazing that would come after. So that's what I would encourage you to try before you try skipping it altogether.
Awesome. Number 4.
Um, Weight loss is linear.
Oh, does anyone still believe that?
Um, yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Because it's still surprising to a lot of people when they step on the scale after doing everything right and the scale's gone up,
Okay.
right? So whether or not you could probably ask most people and they'd be like, "No, I get it. Weight loss isn't linear." But you're still gonna have that person be frustrated when they've done everything right and the scale goes up, which suggests they don't fully believe it,
Yeah,
right?
it's like they're the one exception.
So fat loss is fairly linear if we're consistent, but our scales don't measure fat loss. We don't really have an easy way to measure fat loss. But if you do everything consistently, everything right, over day in, day out, week in, week out, over and over again, you're probably losing fat at a fairly consistent rate.
I
Go
think
ahead.
Now is a good time to interject that if anyone was like, what do you mean scales don't calculate fat loss? This would be a great opportunity to go back and listen to our podcast on fat loss versus weight loss. And I can put the link in the description below so that people actually have access to that, because Alex is trying to say that the scale is measuring weight. That could be water weight and not fat, right? And that's where you're trying to go with this.
Totally. Yeah. The scale tells us how heavy we are. And our bone density changes, our water retention changes, our fat changes, our muscle changes, all these things change. So the scale can't differentiate between which is which. Some of your scales have a body fat measuring system in them. It's not accurate. I promise you, it's not accurate. It's another tool. That's fine. I'm not saying don't use it. It's another tool, but it isn't that accurate. Your $20 bathroom scale isn't accurately measuring your body fat. So, the fat loss can be fairly linear, but the weight loss, the number on the scale, is going to have many, many ups and downs due to water retention. And that's it. The water, most of our day-to-day change is day-to-day water change. So my tip with that is to find a way to learn and understand water retention. And that might be with working with a program like Breaking 90. It might be doing your own research. It might be a number of things, but and we talk about it tons. So I mean, by all means, go back and listen to some other podcasts where we've talked about it. But the more we get to understand and accept water retention changes, the less that scale can control you.
I love
That's
that.
it. Yeah, that's it for that one.
Cool. Number 5.
Cardio is the best for fat loss.
Go off.
Okay, so first of all, there is no best. The best is the best for fat loss, right? Like the best for you is what is the best for you. So some people that might be cardio, and I know there's people that'll listen to this and scream, "You're wrong. It's not cardio." But like I can't force you to lift weights. And so strength training is superior to cardiovascular training for fat loss. But if you hate strength training, you're probably not going to do it, or you're not going to do it well, or you're not going to put your heart into it, or you're not going to do it consistently. So I'd still rather that person do cardiovascular training consistently than no training at all. If you can find it in your heart to fit in some resistance training, it is superior. It is going to help you. We put on muscle mass, it increases our metabolic rate. The body goes through a lot more repair and recovery in days after strength training than it does in days after cardiovascular training. All of this is giving a higher opportunity for fat loss. So it is, but more than anything, consistency is king. Find something that you're willing to do consistently and then complement it with nutrition. Don't try to drive yourself into the ground by doing more exercise. It is a losing battle. You absolutely will not get there by doing that. You need to find your consistent, what you're ready, willing, and able to commit to from an exercise standpoint, and then complement it with your nutrition. That's the recipe for success there.
That's beautiful. Love that.
Um, and the last thing I'll interject with is like people are like, oh, you just gave me an out. I don't have to do strength training. Like you're probably, if you start strength training consistently, you're probably going to start enjoying it more. So give it a shot. Don't just write it off. I think most people don't like it because they find it very intimidating in the beginning. Most people don't like it because they're not good at it in the beginning. But once you start to get better at it, you stop being so sore and it becomes less intimidating. Most people are going to enjoy it a lot more. So at least allow yourself to get to that point.
Hmm. I'm reading a book right now on self-esteem and how we develop it within ourselves. And one of the key components or pillars is self-acceptance, meaning accepting what is, and accepting what is not is not. And I like this comes to mind where it's like, I can accept that I don't like strength training. And in that acceptance, I'm no longer resisting the reality that I don't like it. And that might be the key thing that allows you to get to the gym. Because acceptance doesn't mean that you have to like or condone something. You can just understand the reality is, I don't enjoy this, and I'm going to go do strength training.
Yep.
Because you're getting out of your own way at that point when you're accepting that reality, understanding this is just something that has to get done. And I think it's the same, if you really want to see the transformation that you have in your mind, you've got to put in the work. You've got to create the discipline to get consistency. It's the same way if you want a clean home and you can't afford to hire someone, you have to accept the fact that you have to vacuum, right? You
Yep.
don't have to learn how to like it. You have to figure out how to work it into your routine.
Totally. There's a lot of things we're gonna have to do as adults that we don't like doing, but we have to do. So it might mean that you're never the person that goes to the gym 5 days a week and strength trains 5 days a week because they love it and they can't wait for the next session, but you might find a way to fit in your 2 sessions per week.
Yeah, and I think too when you bring in the goal or the bigger perspective, if some of you, so many of you have such beautiful intentions with your goals. For example, I want to be healthy and around for the grandchildren, let's say. Certain generations will say that, and it's like, can you accept that you don't have to like strength training to get the result that you can keep up with your grandkids or carry them or feel confident babysitting them? Like that's a small sacrifice to make to get that beautiful result.
Good point. Yep.
Anywho, back to you.
Um, Night snacking in that certain foods are bad or worse at nighttime. So a banana is a banana no matter what time of day you eat the banana. It's got the same amount of grams of carbs, it's got the same grams of sugar, it's got the same amount of calories no matter what time of day we consume it. It's not going to make a difference from a fat loss standpoint. The only caveat to this is if you eat so much at night that it's affecting your sleep quality, then you're impacting your ability to lose fat because we do a lot of our fat loss during our sleep, during our state of recovery. So if we're eating so much that our body's running hot and like working hard to digest, that's different. But eating something like a banana or a small snack any time of day has the same caloric input. It's not going to change the amount of fat that we're losing as a result.
Cool. I love that because if people, some people will think like, okay, I'm eating all the right things, I'm following the nutrition plan. But if you are eating that double protein meal that we were talking about, because your fasting window is so, so small, right before bed, and your body is running hot trying to digest a red meat or something like that, right? You're affecting sleep quality at that point. So even your nutrition can be dialed in and your body is having trouble processing it literally.
Yeah, and so my tip to this one is that protein is still most advantageously used spread out. So you giving your and so what I mean by that is if you eat all your protein in one sitting versus all of your protein split up, your body will be able to use the protein better if it's split up. So having some source of protein as your later day snack is a good option because we're then gonna go 8 hours with no protein. So if you're gonna have that late night snack, it should be something small, something easy for your body to digest. Um, and ideally have some protein in it.
That's great.
We can't spot reduce fat. That's a big one. People want to lose fat in their thighs or their sides or their arms. People come to us often and say, I want to lose fat here. Most people have stubborn spots. Everybody's are different, and it's usually the last spot to go and the first spot to come back for that individual. So that's just your makeup. That's part of who you are. There's nothing wrong with that. In order to lose the fat there, we have to work on losing the fat everywhere. Doing extra curls isn't going to help you lose fat faster on your arm. Doing extra squats isn't going to help you lose fat faster on your butt or your thighs. It might put on a little bit more muscle mass in that area slowly, which could help tighten the skin, tone, that kind of thing. So I'm not saying like it's not going to help you with the look, but we're not actually losing fat quicker in an area, and it's not possible to lose fat quicker in an area. Fat comes on and off the entire body together.
Beautiful.
Last one, avoiding fruit because of the sugar. So sugar, sugar. No, I'm not starting there. I'll start with fruit. Fruit. The beauty of fruit is it comes with a ton of fiber. It's filling and it takes us time to consume it. So if we look at something like dried fruit or fruit juice, we can consume it very quickly. A lot of the fiber has been removed. Most of the sugar's still there that comes with it naturally. But we can consume it much quicker in a higher quantity. So it adds up a lot quicker. If you sat down and ate 8 bananas, it would be a lot of calories, a lot of sugar. Most people won't be able to do that because it takes time. It gives the body time to catch up, be like, yeah, you know what, I'm full. I don't really want more than 2 bananas. Like I'm good. And so that's the benefit to actually eating the fruit instead of other options like juice and dried fruit and things like that they make it more palatable and easier to consume in a quick manner. It's the great thing about fruit is that it takes time. It takes you time to eat an apple. It's only 100 and whatever 30 calories for that apple, but it's going to take you 5-10 minutes to consume it. You got a bunch of fiber and it gives your body a chance to catch up and say, great, I feel good now. I'm content. I don't need another apple or another 6 apples, right?
Uh-huh.
So that's the beauty of fruit. You don't need to avoid fruit. They're super healthy, tons of nutrients, tons of vitamins. There's naturally occurring sugars. So any time that we look at consuming too much sugar, it's not going to help us, but you're not ever going to get too much sugar from consuming fruit. You're going to get too much sugar from eating candy or drinking a can of Coke or eating too much dessert. You're not going to ever, it's very, very rare, I should say, over consume fruits, vegetables, or protein.
Uh-huh. Awesome. This is a great show.
Hopefully people found it helpful.
I did, and I know a lot of these things.
Yeah, and like I said, there's a million more. I literally typed fat loss myths into Google and I saw like the first 6 or 8 headers come up that I liked, and I was like, yeah, I'll talk about that, talk about that, talk about that. So if there's others you want to hear about, just reach out to me.
All right. Well, thank you for this.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm actually just gonna wrap it up because we left them with a tip in each one. I'm not gonna throw another tip into the mix now. But what I do want to say is if any of this was shocking to you or you're still unsure about any of this, reach out and have this conversation with us. This is what we do with Breaking 90 students. It's a lot more than us helping you lose fat. It's helping us educate you so that you can lose fat and keep it off and learn these kinds of things. You can learn about water retention. You can learn about optimal nutrients. You can learn about how to do this for the rest of your life without it being overly challenging. So, if that's a conversation you want to have, our doors are always open. Please reach out to us. And the last thing I'll ask is wherever you're listening to this, take a screenshot, share it on Instagram, and tag at Breaking 90 Fitness.
Have a good day.
Thanks, guys.